Chapter 1. There is no one left. When Mary Lennox was sent to live with her uncle at Misselthwaite Manor, everyone described her as the most unpleasant-looking child they had ever seen. And it was true. She had a thin face, a frail body, limp yellow hair, and a constant scowl. Her hair and skin were a pale, sickly yellow because she had been born in India and had spent her childhood suffering from one illness after another. Her father held a post in the British government and was always busy and sick himself. Her mother, a famous beauty, cared only for parties and socializing. She had never wanted a little girl, so when Mary was born, she immediately handed her over to a native nanny, or ayah. The nanny was instructed to keep the child out of sight to avoid disturbing the mother. So, as a sickly, crying, unattractive baby, Mary was kept hidden away. As she grew into a frail, irritable toddler, she remained hidden. Mary only remembered seeing the faces of her nanny and the other local servants. Because her mother would be furious if the child's crying disturbed her, the servants always obeyed Mary and let her have her way in everything. By the time she was 6 years old, she had become as spoiled and selfish as a child could possibly be. Her first young English governess, hired to teach her to read and write, disliked her so much that she quit within 3 months. Other teachers came and went even faster. If Mary hadn't decided on her own that she wanted to read books, she would never have learned the alphabet at all. One brutally hot morning, when she was about 9 years old, she woke up feeling extremely irritable. She grew even angrier when she saw a strange servant standing by her bed instead of her usual nanny.
"Why are you here? Get out! Send my nanny to me."
The woman looked terrified but could only stammer that
the nanny could not come.
When Mary flew into a rage, kicking and hitting her, the woman grew even more frightened, repeating that
it was simply impossible for the nanny to come.
Something strange was in the air that morning. The household routine was broken, and several of the servants had disappeared. The ones Mary did see moved silently and hurried past with pale, terrified faces. No one would explain what was happening, and her nanny still did not appear. As the morning went on, Mary was completely left to herself. Eventually, she wandered out into the garden and began playing alone under a tree near the porch. She pretended to plant a flower bed, sticking bright red hibiscus blossoms into little mounds of dirt. All the while, her anger grew. She muttered to herself, planning the insults she would scream at her nanny, side-eye, once she returned.
"Pig! Pig! Daughter of pigs!"
she whispered, using the worst insult she knew. She was grinding her teeth and repeating this when she heard her mother walk onto the porch with a guest. She was with a young, fair-skinned officer who looked like a boy, whom Mary knew had recently arrived from England. The child stared at them, focusing especially on her mother. Mary rarely got to see her, and she was always mesmerized by how tall, slim, and beautiful her mother was, always dressed in lovely clothes. Her mother had silky, curly hair, a delicate nose, and large, bright eyes that usually seemed to be laughing. She wore light, flowing dresses that Mary described as being full of lace. This morning, her dresses seemed even more elegant, but her eyes were wide with fear as she looked up at the young officer.
"Is it really that bad?" "Oh, is it?"
Mary heard her ask.
"It's terrible. Terrible, Mrs. Lennox. You should have left for the cooler mountain regions weeks ago."
Her mother wrung her hands.
"Oh, I know I should have. I only stayed behind for that silly dinner party. What a fool I was."
Just then, a loud, piercing wail erupted from the servants' quarters. Her mother clutched the young officer's arm, and Mary began to shiver from head to toe. The crying grew louder and more frantic.
"What is that? What is happening?"
Mrs. Lennox gasped.
"Someone has died. You didn't tell me that it had reached your servants."
"I didn't know. Come with me. Come inside."
She turned and ran back into the house. After that, horrifying things happened, and the mystery of the morning was finally explained. Cholera had broken out in its most deadly form, and people were dying rapidly. Mary's nanny had fallen ill during the night, and her sudden death was the reason for the servants crying. Before the next day, 3 more servants died, and the rest fled in terror. During the confusion and panic of the second day, Mary hid herself in the nursery. Everyone forgot about her. Nobody thought of her, and nobody wanted her. Strange things happened that she knew nothing about. Mary spent the hours alternating between crying and sleeping. She only knew that people were sick, and she heard strange, frightening noises. Once, she crept into the dining room. She found it empty. A half-eaten meal was still on the table. The chairs and plates looked as if they had been pushed back in a hurry when the diner suddenly stood up. The child ate some fruit and biscuits. Since she was thirsty, she drank a nearly full glass of wine. It was sweet, and she did not realize how strong it was. It quickly made her very sleepy. Frightened by the screams from the huts and the sound of running feet, she returned to the nursery and locked herself in. The wine made her so drowsy that she could barely keep her eyes open. She lay down on her bed and fell into a deep sleep for a very long time. Many things happened while she slept so deeply. However, she was not disturbed by the crying or the sound of things being carried in and out of the house. When she finally woke up, she lay in bed and stared at the wall. The house was completely quiet. She had never known it to be this silent. She heard no voices and no footsteps. She wondered if everyone had recovered from the cholera and if the trouble was finally over. She also wondered who would take care of her now that her nanny was dead. There would probably be a new nanny, and maybe she would tell new stories. Mary had grown tired of the old ones. She did not cry about her nurse's death. She was not a loving child and had never cared for anyone. The noise, the rushing around, and the wailing had scared her. She was angry because no one seemed to remember she existed. Everyone was too panicked to think of a little girl whom nobody loved. When people caught the cholera, they only seemed to care about themselves. But if everyone was well now, surely someone would remember her and come to find her. But nobody came. As she lay waiting, the house seemed to grow even quieter. She heard a rustling sound on the floor mat. Looking down, she saw a small snake gliding along. It watched her with eyes like tiny jewels. She was not afraid. It was a harmless little creature that would not hurt her, and it seemed in a hurry to leave. It slipped under the door as she watched. "How strange and quiet it is," she said to herself. "It feels like there is no one left in the house except me and the snake." A moment later, she heard footsteps in the yard, and then on the porch. They were men's footsteps. The men entered the house and spoke in low voices. No one went to meet them or speak to them. They began opening doors and looking into the rooms.
What a tragedy. That beautiful woman. I suppose the child died too. I heard there was a child, though no one ever saw her.
Mary was standing in the middle of the nursery when they opened the door a few minutes later. She looked like an unpleasant, angry little girl. She was frowning because she was hungry and felt completely neglected. The first man to enter was a tall, broad officer she had once seen talking to her father. He looked exhausted and worried. When he saw her, he was so shocked that he nearly jumped backward.
"Barney, there is a child in here. A child left all alone. In a place like this. Heavens, who is she?"
I am Mary Lennox.
The little girl said, standing up straight and stiff. She thought the man was very rude to call her father's house a place like this.
I fell asleep when everyone got sick, and I just woke up. Why hasn't anyone come for me?
"It's the child no one ever saw."
The officer exclaimed, turning to the other men.
"She was completely forgotten."
Why was I forgotten? Why isn't anyone coming?
Poor little kid. There is no one left to come.
In that sudden and strange way, Mary discovered that her father and mother were gone. They had died and been carried away in the night. The few servants who survived had fled as fast as they could, completely forgetting about the little girl. That was why the house was so quiet. It was true, there was no one left in the house except Mary and the little rustling snake.